Another question I have from the audience is that have you experienced any cultural shock when you first moved back? Do you see a lot of similarities or differences in terms of the working style or the communication style between working in the UK versus working in Asia?
I can start first, and then you both can add. Yeah, in terms of the culture shock, and I think like Singapore is a really quite good, and because I mentioned that it has both Western and Eastern culture, but I still experience some culture shocks, and because I spent quite a lot of time in the UK, and I started my career in the UK, and after moving to Singapore, I do see the difference is the pace. So it's very fast paced, and in terms of both life and the work, and so to find a balance between the two, and it would take time. And also like moving to a new country, have to adapt to the new environment, having setting up the connection here, and yeah, it's a experience that I think a lot of people have to go through, but some people take a relatively short time to go through, and some people take a longer time. And I think the harder bit for me is probably the work pace, and it's a very fast. And so comparing to the UK, that here people do have more kind of opportunities to take the responsibility. So people may have already have a lot of a responsibility to take at the early stage of their career. So they do progress faster in that way. And then for people who may specializing in very niche areas, and in the UK, and after moving to Asia, it needs to kind of adapt the change of this very quickly. So if you used to work in the pricing for many years, but haven't done much reserving or risk management, but in Asia, I think like those sort of very technical niche jobs and relatively less. And then what people do is to have a broader experience. So although they do the risk management, but they still have the exposure to pricing, exposure to reserving, and to business development, product development, many areas. So to adapt to this change quickly is what required in this market. So although people do expect you don't have the experience, a lot of experience in this area, but how you can apply what you learned, and then to come up a solution very quickly, and that's the difference. And then what I see is that the people with very good problem solving, very good to adapt to the change, and good communication can adjust very well. And where I think people focusing on very technical part of the job for many years, a long time, and may feel a little bit kind of difficult and to change very quickly. But it does depends on people and on experience. And to move to Asia, you do expect to kind of get a wider exposure, and then push up the limit very quickly.
Okay. Wenxie, do you want to add anything?
Sure. I think I always find this question a little bit difficult, because to some extent I didn't feel it as a shock, maybe because of my life experience in a way. Like I moved to the UK at a quite young age, so, and at the time I didn't speak much English, and so I couldn't understand like a thing when I first went to school. So I think that was quite shocking to me. So I think, and then comparing to I guess what I've experienced like when I was a kid, I guess like when I moved to Hong Kong, what I experienced here maybe it wasn't too much of a shock. But having heard what Tianyuan has just said, I guess there are a few points that kind of I can pick up on. And Well, I guess for me, it was a move from London to Hong Kong, as well as moving from the industry to a consulting environment. So I guess some of the differences I've experienced could be coming from either it's a switch of a city or it's a switch from industry to consulting. Like Kenyon said, for example, the pace here is from what I've seen so far quite a bit faster than what I used to experience in London. Not saying I had a 9 to 6 job back in London, but anyway, I guess also you are expected to take more responsibilities at an earlier stage. I think like I was saying, like I came here, one of the reasons for coming here is because the industry is a younger industry and it's less developed than the UK, which means a lot of opportunities for you to grab. But at the same time, like it doesn't come for free. So you are expected to take up more responsibility. And also like maybe in a consulting environment, you are expected to multitask a bit more, and also more exposure and also more responsibility from the soft skill and also people management side. So I think that those have been like key areas where I had to like learn very fast and develop myself. I guess also like what Tianyu has mentioned, I think also in particular for myself, like Xuan, when you introduced me to the audience earlier, I was quite specialized, like in a niche sector when I was working for Aviva, like internal model, like calibrations and methodology. Not all firms, not all companies have internal model, for example. Just like then I was focused on a very small part of it. So, and also like we were saying, like the risk-based capital is kind of just starting up here in Asia, and at an earlier stage of development comparing to Solvency II. So basically what I've learned technically, like maybe in my past 4 years of career before I came to Hong Kong, was, I wouldn't say useless, but it's not the core skill set I had used or deployed in the past few years of doing my day-to-day work here. So yeah, I think that summarizes some of my learnings, or like some of the key differences I've observed so far.
Thank you, Wanxie. Mingyu, do you want to share your experience? Because obviously, I think for Tianyuan and Wanxie, they're moving to Asia, but they're still in I believe it's an English-speaking environment at workplace. But then you're going back to Shanghai, which is slightly different.
Yeah, well, I think it's in terms of language, I think that's not of a big issue, because my mother tongue is still Mandarin, so there's not much of like communication problem. The thing I found hard at the initial few months is about writing report in Chinese in a very professional way, and some of the terms I don't know how to write it, and I have to look up dictionary. But I think as long as this is the language that we are used to, and we study when I was at a young age. So I think things pick up very quickly after 6 months or more. Now I don't feel any problem in terms of writing in Chinese in a professional setting. I just want to add one thing. It's more kind of abstract. Is that in mainland China, especially here, it's a fast-growing economy. It's still fast-growing, and the biggest difference compared with UK in terms of culture is that UK is a more well-developed environment, and we found it's a lot of very well-established rules or settings from law or from to just a governance structure of a company. Because when I was doing consulting in UK, we do a lot of advice in terms of corporate governance, regulation, etc. And I found that when I work in UK, you can find that there are some sort of structure around you or framework, and you just touch these things around you and you follow them, follow the path. There's sort of setting of career paths, or there's certain way of doing things, and you just touch and follow. So sometimes you got bounced back, but you can always feel that there's some sort of path that you can follow. But here in China, because it's fast growing, so for individual, for company, it's in the period of growing and finding the way. So I believe a lot of company, especially for those startups, they don't know where to go. They just go, and in the process they find out it become itself, and that change a little bit of that needs individual to change a little bit of mindset, and also a bit of entrepreneurship when you are doing even just doing a job. You just need to kind of explore and try different ways and to find the best way to do it. And there are fewer guidance in terms of how to do a job. You can ask, you can talk to people, but there may not be answers. So I feel this part is kind of interesting. It was challenging, but it's also the beauty of it. I found this probably the most worst of it in terms of moving back to Asia.
Thank you so much. Thanks for sharing. I think from my takeaway is that you require more entrepreneurship or your mentality, like to take on more responsibility. But obviously there will be more risk, because maybe it's not something that's been like in a like set out in the beginning, that you just need to test and try. You might got errors, but then you the reward is huge if you got it right. That's how I see it.
Yeah, absolutely spot on. And I think the risk appetite here for everyone will be certainly higher.
Yeah, I think so. The next question I have from our audience is that given that the regulatory framework in UK or EU is different from that in Asia, do you find it challenging to adapt or catch up with the Asian regulations? And how could we who work in the UK learn and get prepared before we move back to Asia? Anyone want to touch on this topic?
Well, maybe like just some of my, again, personal experience and views. So I think just like I guess when I used to when I worked in the UK, I didn't know, well, actually I still don't know everything about Solvency II, but I didn't know much about internal model methodology, for example, before I started working for Aviva. So, but then you just learn on the job, or if you want to do better, you spend some of your spare time to read up relevant documents or the regulation itself, and relevant studies, for example. Then that gets yourself prepared. I think being able to learn fast and adapt to the new environment or the new things is probably something we all need to acquire, regardless of whether we are thinking of coming back to Asia or not. Like, for example, we're talking about like what if some of the work we're currently doing gets replaced by IA or etc. But having said that, I guess like we were saying, risk-based capital is a topic that kind of came up quite a few times this evening. So the principles are the same. Like, so if you already know Solvency II, then learning some other risk-based capital regime shouldn't be difficult. Like, there are some maybe some specific terms could be different, some specific requirements could be different, but then the fundamental like theory or the fundamentals about it is the same. And I guess there are also like some other topics which are very generating a lot of like demand or job opportunities at the moment. For example, IFRS 17, that's like an international accounting standard. It's not something that's Asian specific, and so there are many sources to learn about it. Similar like concepts of enterprise risk management or risk management in general is not a new thing, although the local adoption or interpretation may be slightly different, but the principles are the same. I think that's my view.
Tianyuan or Mingyu, do you have anything to add on?
Yeah, probably let me add on some points quickly. I see that in Asia, like in Southeast Asia in particular, because many areas is still developing. So in terms of like the requirement, it may not need very specialized and technical skill sets. And what I see is more in demand is the kind of the broader experience. So no matter what field that you work in, I think to gain as many area experience as possible at the early stage is very beneficial. And for example, if you work in the pricing, but to understand how pricing, reserving, risk management all link together for the business, and I think that's very useful and important to help you kind of step up more quickly, and also to understand as a business practice and how to apply those areas in helping the business and generating profits and then meeting the business requirement is also very useful. So my advice like that at the early stage and is to get as many experience as possible, have a broader view and a more bigger picture of what's going on inside the organization and inside the market, and then even not restricted to the UK, but the globally and what's happening. I think that's also useful for kind of getting the skill sets as much as possible.
Thanks, Jiayuan. Mingyu?
Yeah, for me, I'm still learning them.
That's okay. So now the last question before the end of this session. How's your standard of living changed given the pay package, tax differences, and cost of living when you compare working in the UK versus working in Southeast Asia?
Sorry, do you mean the pay difference? Do you mean the pay difference before and after tax? It's a question for the.
It's a bit sensitive, but then it's about the pay difference and then also your cost of living and also taking into account the tax differences. If that makes sense.
Yeah, so I think it's a question that which people are very interested, and one of the incentive of moving and is to get higher pay maybe. And so what I see here in Singapore, because of the demand and it's not as high as the UK market, and so I think like the expectation is that you may not expect a very big pay rise and after moving to this market, and depends what you want to get. So before the tax, you may expect to get something like at a similar level, but then because Singapore has a lower tax, and so the net pay could be aligned the same or could be better, depends on the experience and job grades. And then in terms of the living of the cost of living, moving to a new country, I think initially before you stabilize, you do expect to have a higher costs in terms of like renting and setting up the all of the houses and everything. And also in Singapore, I do see people get treated differently. You know, foreigners, the PR, the local people, they get very different treat. And then the benefits also varies. And then for the foreigners, before they become a PR or a local Singaporean, they have to pay. They have to pay a higher tax, and they have to let their kids go to the private education because there are very limited chance they can go to the local school. And so the benefit they get is much less than comparing to the local people. And so on that side, I think the cost for the foreigners in Singapore is higher. You know, in the UK, you may have already got a house and everything, and that's not a big expense already. But in Singapore, that renting is another big cost, and you do have to spend on that. But travel is very cheap comparing to the UK. So here, you don't have to pay a lot of fees for the public transportation, but for the if you want to get a car, it's expensive in Singapore.
Okay. How about Wanxie? Yeah, in Hong Kong.
I think maybe a lot of things similar to what Tianyuan has just said. Like tax in Hong Kong is definitely a lot lower than in the UK. So it is quite likely that you will get you have more freedom over your income, I guess, because although tax is lower, but then again, sort of like the kind of services provided by the public sector is probably also less than those you can get from in the UK. And like, for example, you've got NHS, and if you retire in the UK, you have a hopefully a relatively good pension, etc. But then the fact you are paying less tax or national insurance means you will get less of those. So it's like yeah, that's a trade-off, right? In terms of like living standard, I think if you want to live in a big house, unless you are super rich, then Hong Kong is probably not the place for you. So I guess even comparing to like Singapore or Shanghai, I think living space in Hong Kong is not huge. So, and rental is probably more expensive than London. But having said that, like again, the transportation for public transport is quite cheap. Although owning your own car could be very expensive because of the parking space, or parking spaces are very expensive. But I guess having said all that, there is one thing I really like about Hong Kong is well, if you enjoy hot weather, if you like the sun more than the windy, raining days in the UK, then maybe you would like to come to Hong Kong or go to Singapore. And then also, I think the beauty of Hong Kong, from what I've seen so far, is that you have like a very developed city, like what you can see behind me here. With all the CBD and the big companies like insurance companies or banks, etc. Like a lot of opportunities for actuaries, for example. Like normally like actuaries probably find more opportunities in like more developed cities, for example. But at the same time, you have, well, this photo was actually taken by me from the Victoria Peak. So that there are many, quite many mountains in Hong Kong, which is great for hiking, and also you got the outlying islands, which you can just like get there like within 30 minutes or an hour, and then you also have the beaches, and for example, so it's I think it's a rare combination that you don't get in many other like the big cities in the world, like for example, in London, you don't expect you can like just go off on a hiking trail at the back of your house or flat, and then after an hour you can see the sea and you can see the whole Hong Kong like underneath you. So I think I find that quite amazing. Yeah. So
that's great. Thanks, Wanxie. Mingyu, what's your view on this?
I think for mainland China, the tax rate is probably similar to UK or slightly less, but not much differences. In terms of purchasing power, I think overall it's better than in the UK. So transportation, renting, eating out, or the like normal shopping, except for luxury goods, I think it's the overall price is cheaper than in the UK, and also except for housing price in the main cities. So I think for Shanghai, you can still live in a lifestyle similar to London. And people here all complain about raining all the days, but for people coming back from London, you will feel, oh, this is just small case, it's not a big deal. And the weather is quite, yeah. Also for summer, it's much hotter than in London, but we all get air conditioning everywhere, so it will be fine.
Okay.
I think you touched point on the weather, and a lot of people may be scared of very hot weather in Singapore. Actually, my experience is that Singapore have kind of constant temperature, so it's always between like 28 to 30, but it doesn't feel that hot actually. So most of the places have aircon, and you actually feel cold inside the building because of the aircon, and more comfortable to stay outside because of the like get warmer kind of feel warmer air. So I feel that the temperature in Singapore is very comfortable.
All right.
Depends if you do like a humid and a warm weather and the sunshine. I think Singapore is not bad.
Yeah, that's a typical subtropical weather.